Okay, greetings everyone. My name is David Collinsworth. I'm the General Manager CEO of the Brazos River Authority and would like to welcome you and thank you for tuning in to our brown bag on the Brazos. And thanks for carving out an hour of your day to come spend some time with us. The brown bag on the Brazos meetings are meetings that we started hosting a little over a year ago, the week after our board meetings, to make sure that we have another opportunity to update our customers and the public on some of the decisions that our board members took at our last board meeting, and also to just kind of keep you in the loop on what's going on in our world and in the water world of Texas. So we've got a good agenda for you today. And again, thanks for tuning in. Judy, you can go to the next slide. So we've got an agenda that looks like this. We're pretty committed to keeping the meeting to 1 hour so you can get back to your daily activities. We're going to talk a little bit about our proposed changes to regulations from our lakes and other rules. And Riley Woods, our Senior Staff Counsel, will do that. And then Aaron Abel, our Water Services Manager, will walk you through the latest on our water supply update. The Brazos Basin is very large, and we have areas of the basin that are in severe drought, and we have areas of the basin reservoirs that we're actually releasing water out of. So there's a lot going on from a water perspective in the Brazos Basin today. And then also at the end, we'll take questions and answers. Next slide, please, Judy. And here's kind of how you ask questions. So you can, to ask a question, you can click on the question bubble in the upper right-hand corner, and it'll allow you to type in your question, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. If we don't get to your question, we would really like for you to send it to us at information@brazos.org, or if for some reason you don't want to use the screen here to do that, please send us any questions that you have to information@brazos.org, and we'll get you an answer as soon as we can. Next, Judy. Our next board meeting, our board meetings are held every other month. Our next regularly scheduled board meeting is May 23rd, 2022. All of our board meetings are live streamed on YouTube, and you can actually go in and just look at the agenda item that you want to watch. So some of our board meetings last for hours, and you don't have to sit through those. You can just select the board agenda item that you want and watch the video and listen to the decisions and the discussions and see what the Brazos River Authority is doing. Next. So we'll take questions and answers at the very end. And the first part of the meeting, I just want to take a few minutes to talk about our last board meeting, which was 2 Mondays ago. Our board took a lot of very important, considered a very numerous, very important topics of discussion. One of the things that they approved was a Tainer Gate project at Lake Limestone. We have 5 very large Tainer gates, and those gates are the mechanism for which we release water and store water. The lake's almost 50 years old, and we're going through the process of replacing all of those gates. We had bids come in for replacement of those gates, and the bids were somewhere near $20 million, and we selected a contractor and will very shortly sign a contract for those gates to be fabricated and shipped to the site and put in place. So it's about a 2-year project. We're very excited about it. It's just a part of the process of maintaining our infrastructure as it ages. Another discussion point, another agenda item that our board considered was kind of very similar in tone, and that is with our concrete rehabilitation project up at Lake Possum Kingdom for a budget amendment to allow us to really work kind of ahead of schedule to do some concrete enhancement at Lake Possum Kingdom. And that's something that's really important to the Brazos River Authority is making sure that the assets that we own that allow us to store water and release water, that we're maintaining those and looking into the future to understand what needs to be done to maintain those pieces of infrastructure from the standpoint of allowing us to operate those and take care of our business, but also so that our ratepayers can understand the future renovations and what those costs are going to do to our system rate. So we're working very diligently to understand those aspects of the infrastructure that we own and making sure that we're taking care of those. Also, we gave a report about our strategic plan. I wanted to bring that to you because in the months to come, we will be hosting some pretty specific strategic plan discussions and workshops with our board to make sure that the board understands where the organization is going and they can make sure that the ship is pointed in the right direction. So those would be conversations that you'll want to be a part of and understand, so you can see where we're going as far as developing water and maintaining and protecting our infrastructure. And then last but not least, our board also spent a fair amount of time discussing the proposed rules and regulations that we have draft. Out of that discussion, they approved the Brazos River Authority to go public with those draft rules and regulations. And that's kind of the time period that we're in as we speak. And that's why we've asked Riley Woods, our senior counsel, to take some time this morning to walk you through those draft rules and regulations. So Riley, if you'll hop on board and do that.
Absolutely. So let me share my screen. Okay, so, and I'm gonna, I apologize. I apparently I've got like subtitles or something on that I've never seen that before, and it's printing whatever I'm saying. So hopefully it doesn't get that problem. I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. So I'm Riley Woods. I'm with the Brazos River Authority Legal Department, and I will be discussing the revisions to the regulations that we proposed to the board at the last board meeting and that are currently out for public comment. They're going to be out for public comment for a period of 30 days. After that, we will take a look at all those comments and make any additional revisions that we think we need to make and bring that back to the board. What precipitated this was we had questions from the public regarding some of our processes on commercial facilities, and the board had asked us to go back and look at it, and we did. And in that process, we looked at our regulations overall, and we've made a number of revisions to bring about consistency, make sure that we're treating each of our lakes and our different lands the same, bring clarification to some regulations that maybe were less clear. And then we have a few other major changes that I'll go through here as well, including a new process for considering commercial on-water facilities. So the way I have this divided up is I'm going to go through the major changes that we made, and then I'll go through some other minor changes, and then I will provide you all a link to the website, our website, where you can go and take a look at the changes. You can look at a red line version that compares the rules as they exist right now to the proposed revisions, and you can also look at the at the current rules, the old rules. And we're also going to have on that site a place where you can go to submit your comments. We want everybody to have that opportunity to comment on this, and we will also have a link on there where you can see other people's comments. And then we will also have a link where if we make any updates or any changes as we're going through this 30-day period, we'll put those revisions on there as well, so everybody can have an opportunity to look at them and comment on them. So I'm going to go through some of the major revisions first. First, on the on-water facility permitting process. we've made revisions to both the way we do the residential and the commercial permitting. Now, the residential is generally the same as it has been. What we've done is formalize the procedure. And it'll be roughly the same as the commercial, with the big exception of in the commercial process as we go through here, we're going to add a public process to it, a two-step public process that will allow the public the opportunity to comment on and participate in the being able to see what's going on with the proposed commercial permits. So on the residential side of things, basically you're going to be able to submit your application, and then we're going to review that application. We're going to do a technical review of it and then make a determination. And then if the applicant doesn't like the determination we make, like let's say we deny the permit, you'll have an opportunity to appeal that and we will look at it again. Then on the commercial side is going to follow a very similar process. However, like I said, there's going to be this public part to it. So first, on the commercial side, a commercial applicant who wants to put a new commercial on-water facility on one of our lakes or make a major change to one that's already out there, they're going to submit an application to the BRA. And all the BRA is going to do at that point in time is make sure that the application is complete, administratively complete, and that they've filled in all of the right blanks, that they've made the right, they've given all the information that they need to give. We're not going to technically review it at that point. At that point, we'll get with the applicant so that they can determine who potential affected parties are going to be, and there's going to be a preliminary notice and comment period followed by a public hearing. So what'll happen is we'll talk with the applicant, we'll figure out who are the affected parties. Generally, it's going to be people that are within 500 feet of the facility, or if the facility's in a cove, it would be anybody that's in that cove that would be affected by the new facility. And it'll be the responsibility of the applicant to provide notice to each of the affected parties. They'll have to mail notice to them. They'll also post notice in a newspaper for 2 weeks in the general circulation in the area. And there'll be a period of time, no less than 30 days, where people will be able to comment. They'll be able to submit comments to the Brazos River Authority on the facility. And then there will be a public hearing. At the public hearing, the applicant will present their idea. They'll present what it is that they are wanting to do and what their proposal is, and the public will have an opportunity to attend that hearing. The BRA will facilitate it, and the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. And then after that hearing is when the application will go to a technical review. And so we'll do the BRA will then conduct a technical review of the application, taking into consideration what they learned in the hearing and comments as well. And then after we've completed our technical review, we'll get back with the applicant. And if we have any questions, we'll ask the applicant to provide additional information if necessary. And the applicant will have, I don't think it's on here, but they'll have a period of 6 months to provide that additional information. And then once the technical review is complete and we're ready to issue a permit, there will be another comment period where the new revised permit, if there's revisions to it, will be posted online, and the public will once again have a period of time, a period of 10 days this time, to make comments on the permit. And then after that period is finished, and the notice will be the same, the applicant will need to send notice out to each of the affected parties. The applicant will need to post it in the newspaper as well. And then once that process is finished, then we will make a determination as to whether we're going to accept the permit, whether we're going to deny it, or whether we'll accept it in part. And then after that, there will be an appeals process where the applicant or an affected party will be able to appeal our decision. They'll have a 30-day period or a 10-day period, excuse me, to do that. And then if there is an appeal, it'll then go to an on-water review committee that the Brazos River Authority has. And that'll be made up of our lake managers, legal representative, a representative of our government and customer relations department to take a look at it again, and then they'll make a determination. And then if that determination is further appealed, it will go to the GM CEO, and the GM CEO's decision will be final. And that is the process for on-water facility. Next, as far as, and this next bullet point really is very similar to the one before. We made a clarification in the language regarding commercial facilities, that commercial facilities are going to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. But due to that evaluation, as we just discussed, we're putting in this more elaborate process that will get the public involved as well. We're also going to require that commercial facilities maintain spill equipment in case they spill fuel or oil or other chemicals and environmental issues. So they'll need to maintain spill equipment on site. There's also going to be a new, this is a new addition to our regulations, a commercial activities permit, where now we've always required that commercial activities on our lakes or on our lands be approved in writing by the Brazos River Authority, and usually that was handled at the lake level with our lake offices. However, what we're doing is formalizing that into a permit process. And so if anybody is going to do a commercial activity out there on our lakes, or our lands, then they're going to need to go to our lake offices and go through a permit process to get a permit in order to do that. The board will be establishing a permit fee from time to time on that. We are not going to allow certain commercial activities. We're not going to allow commercial activities that involve wakeboarding, parasailing, or if the activity involves food preparation or food cleanup on the water. Next is a clarification regarding boat ramps. Boat ramps residential boat ramps are no longer allowed at our reservoirs. At Possum Kingdom, that was stopped back in 2006. We put in a prohibition at Lake Limestone and Lake Granbury in 2014 when we updated our regulations then. And so what we're clarifying is just that language that was in our regulations to make clear that new residential boat ramps are prohibited. You are going to be allowed to keep boat ramps that were in place prior to those dates. So those boat ramps are grandfathered. And then commercial boat ramps will only be allowed in connection with a commercial activity permit. And those will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Camping areas or camping at public use areas and RV parks, we updated the language here. The way the language used to read was that you could only camp for up to 10 consecutive days. And how we've changed it is you can have a maximum of 10 days camping in a 30 consecutive day period. So the 10 days don't have to necessarily be consecutive, but if you camp for 10 days in a 30-day period at one of our public use areas or one of our RV parks, then you'll have to leave that reservoir and for a period of 30 days before you can camp again. You could go to one of our other reservoirs and camp, but not at another public use area or RV park at the same reservoir. Floating equipment. This also is an expanded regulation. We previously had a regulation regarding equipment such as trampolines or water slides or slalom courses. We've expanded it, but we've made changes. We're just clarifying that if you put equipment like that on the lake, it doesn't have to have an on-water facility permit associated with it, so you don't have to go get a permit for it. However, it can only be temporary in nature, and it must be removable. And if BRA needs you to remove it, then you'll need to remove that. Fuel storage. We also added a new provision related to fuel storage. We're requiring that if you're going to have a fuel storage or fuel dispensing system, usually that's going to be associated with a commercial facility or a commercial operation. You're not allowed to have that for residential or private use, but you'll have to get that designed by an engineer or architect. It's going to have to comply with all applicable laws and regulations. And it's also going to have to comply with other BRA rules. You can, if you go to the red line version of the new proposed revisions, you'll see those additional requirements for BRA, but most of those are generally related to spill prevention and safely storing or dispensing fuel. Finally, the other major change was we added a provision related to archaeological and historical features. So we want to make sure that folks aren't going out and disturbing land that may have archaeological or historical significance. And so you need to make sure that you're following the proper rules set out by the state of Texas dealing with the Historical Commission. We want to make sure that you're not out there disturbing our property, digging on BRA land, etc. So we have a new section dealing with that as well. And some of our former prohibitions on removal of material from BRA properties got moved over to this section. Okay, this takes me to other revisions. So here's a list of other revisions and other changes that we made. A lot of what you're going to see is we basically rearranged and reorganized some of the regulations, maybe make it a little bit more easier to read, a little more intuitive, hopefully. A few provisions were reworded for clarity. We changed a rule requiring watercraft to operate slowly within 50 feet of a shoreline or dock or swimming area. We changed it to 100 feet to be consistent with other requirements we had regarding operation of watercraft. We have added a requirement that if you abandon a watercraft, you need to come notify Brazos River Authority immediately so that we know that it's out there. If you've got two commercial facilities, the fairway distance between the two facilities needs to be at least 1.5 times the length of the longest boat slip at each of the facilities. We've added language that clarifies that if you're in violation of our on-water facility rules and regulations, that we can revoke your permit, and that makes clear that those violations could result in criminal penalties, which are set out in the rules and regulations. We have added a provision that you're not going to place poison, salt blocks, feed, or traps on BRA property. That'll be over in the hunting section of the regulations. There's going to be no bow hunting within 100 feet of an on-water facility or a restricted area. No operation of drones over restricted areas, and no placing of tramway systems over the water. Sometimes people have wanted to put a tramway that goes from the shoreline out to an on-water facility, and we're not going to allow that. There's no stopping, standing, or parking vehicles if we've got a sign telling you not to do that. No commercial activities involving solicitation of guests in our parks. And also there's going to be no placing of notices or signs or advertisements except by written permission of the BRA. So you would need to go talk to our lake offices if that's something that somebody wants to do. And that is pretty much all of the rules and regulations. Once again, go to the red line version, and let me go to the next screen here. Oh yeah, some updates. I apologize, but you can go to the red line version to see those all those edits in detail and some of the other clarifications we made. Now, since I presented this to the board last week, there've been a few clarifications that we need to update, and we'll be updating those as well on the website. First, we are adding a clarification that our on-site sewage facility oversight is only at Lake Possum Kingdom and Lake Limestone. We don't do that at Lake Granbury, and so we're going to clarify that in the language. We're going to clarify language regarding the grandfathering of rail systems. As I talked about earlier, when we began our prohibition on boat ramps, at the same time we prohibited rail systems, and we're just clarifying that rail systems were grandfathered the same as boat ramps were and have the same rules applicable to them. And that's for residential use. We also are correcting an accidental deletion that happened when we were doing the red line. We moved a requirement that prohibited fueling or dispensing systems for private use that used to be in the on-water facility section, and we moved that over to the new fuel section, and in the process it accidentally got deleted, so we've added that back in. Finally, so you can go to our website, go to www.brazos.org/rules-regs, and you'll be able to find all of these rules and changes that we're proposing to make to the regulations. You'll be able to have a link that takes you to the red line version that shows the changes. There's a link that'll take you to the current version of the rules and regulations. There's also a link that'll take you to the site where you can leave a comment. And then there's also a link where we will periodically, as people provide us comments, we will be putting those comments out for everybody else to see. We want total transparency. We want an ability to have an open dialogue about these revisions. We want folks to be able to see what are other people saying. So that's so that people can say, hey, I agree with this, and maybe that emphasis will help us understand that this is a really strong feeling. Or it may be that somebody disagrees with a revision that somebody else is recommending, and that helps us as well to be able to know that. And so we want the folks out there in the community who this is going to affect to be able to see each other's comments. And we will also be updating revisions. If we get a comment, or as we're going through this, if we see a correction that needs to be made, such as the 3 I just went through, we will make, and it's a clear revision that needs to be done now, we will make that revision and we will put a link to that on that page as well, so that everybody will have the opportunity to see those revisions. And with that, that is the end of my presentation, and I'm willing to take questions. And David, I don't know if we're doing questions at the very end or if we're taking questions now, if anybody has them.
We'll do questions at the end, Riley, as they're received. And I appreciate your presentation. And once again, we'll be rolling all this up and presenting it to our board of directors for final consideration in future meetings. So stay tuned and stay tuned in so that you can follow along and understand where we're going with the new rules and regulations. At this time, trying to get my camera to come on there. At this time, Aaron Abel, our water services manager, is going to visit with you a little bit about the uniqueness of the Brazos system. Again, like I said in my intro remarks, we've got parts of the basin that are in drought, parts of the basin that we have reservoirs that are releasing flood releases, and he'll talk with you about that and our reservoir levels and projections to come. So Aaron, take it away.
Right. Thank y'all. I think should be able to see my slides now. Good afternoon again, and obviously thanks for joining us. In this water supply update, we're going to touch on BRA's drought contingency plan and how we incorporate what's called the Palmer Hydrological Drought Index and how that's tied into the plan. And as we do in most of these water supply updates, we'll talk about the condition of the water supply system and go over some of the projections of the system in the near term, and then relay what we're seeing concerning longer term projections of temperature and rainfall. I know that's, on a lot of folks' mind is how the next several months as we enter into the meat of spring and when we typically receive a lot of our rain, hopefully that'll be the case. But if it's not, what would happen and go from there. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the drought contingency plan and what our drought contingency plan is. We entered stage 1 drought watch as part of our plan for a number of the reservoirs and the reservoir subsystems late last month, and that included Lakes Proctor, Aquila, Belton, and Limestone, and then also some of the subsystems of the main stem, Possum Kingdom, Granbury, Whitney system, and then Georgetown and Stillhouse. And we issued customer letters to notify our customers, but also we provided public notice as well. And the stated goals of stage 1 drought watch are to raise awareness of the developing drought situation and to achieve 5% reduction of water use that would have occurred in the absence of drought contingency measures. So, with this declaration of drought watch, we wanted to explain what a drought contingency plan does and provide some background of why it's needed and generally what it does. So, basically a drought contingency plan requires a couple things. One is to monitor the water supply system in order to assess drought conditions. So as we enter a drought, and we're doing this all the time, but we're monitoring lake levels, we're monitoring stream flow, and how that relates to our system. But as drought conditions cause the water supply to decrease through reservoir drawdowns or duration of operations, for example, the amount of time the Williamson County Regional Raw Water Line transfers water from Stillhouse and Georgetown, certain triggers are reached that require some type of implementation of goals for requested water use reductions. And so the goal for all drought contingency plans, and in the context of what we do as far as wholesale water, we're looking at the quantity of water that's held in reservoirs. Municipalities and others, they look at it a little bit differently concerning maybe treatment capacity. But our plan is mainly related to the water supply and monitoring how to extend that water supply during drought conditions. And that allows for the water supply system time to recover as we move forward and through a drought. And so that's really the goal of a drought contingency plan. And so the BRA's drought contingency plan, it contains 4 drought stages. And I mentioned stage 1 drought watch. We have, other stages, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4 that implement different recommendations and requirements as far as water use reduction. BRA is required to maintain and update a drought contingency plan through rules set forth by the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and through the Texas Administrative Code. So we have major updates to the drought contingency plan, and those are required every 5 years. And our last update to our drought contingency plan occurred in April of 2019. And those are required. So our next update will be in April of 2024. And if you want to learn more about BRA's drought contingency plan, you can find the plan on our website. I provided the link at the bottom of this slide, and you can go to that link and find some more details about the plan. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is also how the Palmer Hydrological Drought Index feeds into the plan. So that was the basis of entering into Stage 1 Drought Watch last month. And so really the formation of why we use the Palmer Hydrological Drought Index, and we call it also the PHDI. So during 2011, which most know that is what's considered the hottest and driest 1 year period since at least the late 1800s, it was really evident that when we entered into that drought, we saw rapid drought development and causing decreases in water supply, decreases in reservoirs and levels in relatively a short period of time. So from the lessons learned in managing that drought, it was pointed out that an early drought indicator should be developed as a trigger to enter Stage 1 Drought Watch. One, to raise awareness of the developing drought situation really before we start to see reservoir levels decline and water supply decline. So as we looked at our drought contingency plan after 2011, we evaluated several early drought indicators and that could be monitored and used as an early drought warning indicator. And it was in that evaluation, the Palmer Hydrological Drought Index was selected as a metric to be monitored and used to enter into Stage 1 Drought Watch. And we've used the PHDI as one of several indicators to enter into Stage 1 Drought Watch since 2012. And it was triggered. The most recent Stage 1 Drought Watch was triggered by the PHDI and moving into more negative territory. And you see this graphic here in the top left, that the index for the PHDI ranges from -4, which is extremely dry. The more negative you are, the drier you are, so to speak, in a certain area or watershed. Whereas if you go positive, and you'll see back in the August of 2021, and this is example at PK, we were +2, which was pretty wet. We had the lake was full at that time, and so it's used to identify and monitor drought, and it takes into account the longer term dryness that will affect water storage, stream flow, and groundwater. So once you start to see PHDI numerics go negative, you can kind of know that the next step, if we continue to have the below normal rainfall, that we'll start to see declining stream flow, and we've already seen this declining stream flow. We'll talk about that in a minute. So as I mentioned, the top left is the PHDI over the last, I think, 7 or 9 months. And the input parameters for the PHDI include monthly temperature. So you'll see in these other graphics in this slide, temperature departure in a monthly time span, soil moisture. So in the top right, you'll see the soil moisture, and that's basically the amount of water that's held or captured in the soil relative to volume of certain volume of soil. So really, that's the amount of water that has the capacity to absorb into the soil and for plants and whatnot. And also the other dominant factor is departure from normal of precipitation, and we've seen this in previous water supply updates is monitoring how far below normal we are for a certain period of time. So Texas is divided into 10 climatic zones, each representing similar characteristics such as vegetation, temperature, humidity, rainfall, and seasonal changes. And the National Climatic Data Center provides these PHDI calculations monthly and weekly. We use the monthly metric as an indicator to move into a certain drought stage, the Stage 1 Drought Watch, and that's what you see in the upper left-hand corner. The PHDI is used as a drought trigger for the drought contingency plan to help detect drought conditions in advance of the system becoming stressed. So it basically helps us get out in front of a drought. And with the entrance of stage 1 drought watch, the PHDI reaches a negative 2.4 value. And we delayed entering into stage 1 drought watch for some of the reservoirs within the system as we reached negative 2.4 in December, actually. And, when you do that, when you enter into stage 1 drought watch in winter, it really doesn't do much because you don't have the demands, you don't have the water use, and you can't really move the needle, if you will, as far as reduction in water use. So with use already low, we did delay until March. And so the next slide will kind of get into the magnitude of what recent stream flow levels upstream of PK, how that relates to the PHDI. So the blue bars in this graphic represent the total volume of flow at the South Bend gauge, and that's approximately 30 river miles upstream of PK from October of 2021 through the end of March for each year represented on the graph. So this goes back to 1995. And most of the inflows that PK receives, and when we say inflows, that's water entering the reservoir, flows past the South Bend gauge. It basically captures a large watershed all the way, essentially to the Lubbock area down to PK. The dashed red line is the most recent flow volume extended back for easy comparison to others. And you can see what we've seen here in the last 6 months is definitely low, comparatively speaking. 2014 was the last period that we experienced lower flow volumes that we're seeing this year. So that's the 2014 period is part of the 4-year period that's considered the drought of record for the Possum Kingdom area. For comparison, the average October through March flow volume for South Bend since 1995 is about 130,000 acre feet per year. So it's about 24% of the total capacity of PK. And if you compare what we've seen over the last 6 months to what normally happens in the fall to spring as far as flow volumes dating back to 1995, it's only 15%. So we're definitely well below normal as far as flow volumes concerned and water flowing into the Possum Kingdom area. Transitioning into what the current drought monitor looks like, and David mentioned how variable the conditions we're seeing. It's kind of amazing what we're seeing, but that's what happens when you have a large basin. We have very different geographic conditions and weather phenomena. So this is the drought monitor with the BRA water supply system status added over the top, and each colored circle indicates the percent full of each of the reservoirs. It's something that we typically show at these water supply updates. So the color coding of the percent full represents the amount of water that's held in the capacity at those reservoirs. And the drought monitor basically depicts the qualitatively what drought conditions are over the U.S. and Texas, and these are updated every Thursday. And I want to stress the context of water supply to what we're seeing in the current drought period. From a water supply perspective, we're doing okay. We're doing fine. We have plenty of water, but what we're seeing in the drought monitor are mainly agricultural impacts from the drought typically occurring due to soil moisture deficits and departure from normal rainfall. So it's important to monitor these agricultural impacts or dry soil impacts as an indicator for geographic information to see where and when we may see water supply impacts. So we've also seen significant wildfires in part of the basin from essentially the I-35 corridor upstream to the Lake Granbury upstream of Proctor. There's been some extensive, devastating wildfires, and that's a product of a very wet summer of last year with high vegetation growth that occurred, and then we have winter that causes dormancy of that vegetation, and then lack of rainfall and low relative humidities, and then spring winds that really aid to the fire potential. And we've seen those fires. What we've seen is this this graphic here, as far as the exceptional to really severe drought from most of the area from upstream of I-35 area is really due to the departure from normal rainfall. And that band from essentially Granbury down to the I-35 area, we're seeing, departure from normal rainfall over the last 6 months of 8 to 12 inches. And so, that's almost in some places, that's a third of the rainfall that you get in 1 year. So that's a significant amount of departure from normal rainfall. And it's amazing to see the differences in drought conditions really geographically. If you can look at, the southern part of Coryell County, we're seeing exceptional drought conditions. And then you move, probably 30 to 40 miles southeast into the eastern part of Bell County, and you don't see any drought conditions. So we've seen above normal and normal rainfall really in parts of the Central Basin, and then upstream just really not much rain at all over the last 6 months. So overall, we're 92% of the basin is in some form of drought intensity, and hopefully we can continue to see some improvements, as obviously April, May, and June is when we get the most rainfall in in Texas and in the Brazos Basin. So we'll have to see how the next couple months pans out. But this is a graphic. This represents the water supply status as of Wednesday, April 6th. So essentially the 11 reservoirs in the system, the Upper Brazos on the far left, and starting with PK, and then as you move down to the right, obviously the Gulf Coast, and the height of the bars represent the total storage capacity of the reservoirs under the conservation pools. And the blue area represent the actual water stored, and the white is the empty storage. And you see the table in the upper right, which represents the percent full and drawdown. So you can see generally most of the reservoirs are around 90% full or higher, with drawdowns. These reservoirs around 3 feet from full or less. And obviously we'd like to see it maybe a little bit higher than that right now, but we still have some wetter months ahead of us. And the core reservoirs of Lake Granger and Somerville are impounding flood water right now, and they're actually evacuating flood water from those two reservoirs, and those are obviously the two reservoirs that aren't in drought condition, not in the stage 1 drought watch. Lake Granger is currently releasing about 50 cubic feet per second, and Somerville is around 200 cubic feet per second. We obviously are in the Lake Georgetown area. That's our lowest percent full and most drawdown. We continue to supplement the water supply at Lake Granger through transfer of water from the Williamson County Regional Raw Water Line from Stillhouse Hollow. We initiated the transfer back in mid-March. We had about a month, 5 to 6 weeks, where we didn't have to transfer water because we moved above the on trigger. So, and obviously we have the reservoirs that are highlighted in yellow are the reservoirs that are in stage 1 drought watch. And I mentioned that earlier. Looking forward, as far as the end of May projections, this is we issue reservoir projections monthly at the start of each month for the next 2 months. So this is looking at the end of May with minimum inflows and high evaporation. So these 2-month projections, as I mentioned, are updated at the first of the month. We just updated these, and these are on our website. During wetter periods, we typically don't do reservoir projections, but obviously we're looking at potential for increased reservoir drawdown, so we'll continue to do these projections. So what this shows is if we continue to see dry conditions in the basin for the rest of the month and really through May, the basin as a whole, as far as percent storage, could drop down to around 87%, and that does include conservative estimates of water supply releases made from the reservoir system to our downstream customers in the lower basin. So around 35,000 acre feet of water released in the next 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, by the end of May. So we're not expecting, hopefully this won't happen, but this is something that's possible if we continue to have the increased lack of rainfall over the next couple months. So seasonal outlooks, this is something that we typically show in the water supply update. So these are from the from NOAA, from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So at the top left, you'll see the seasonal precipitation outlook issued March 17th for precipitation, valid for April through June. So this goes through June and captures most of what we call our rainiest season. So we're seeing from a long-term perspective below normal precipitation, above normal temperature, so increased evaporation, and then that all gets fed into what the seasonal drought outlook, which continues to show drought persisting, and in areas where we don't have drought, mainly in the central basin and towards the lower part of the basin, development and drought. So that's what the National Weather Service and NOAA are predicting, and hopefully we won't get to that point and we'll get some rain. But in the near term, I guess in the 8 to 14 day forecast, we're going to continue to see some of these systems bring some chances of rainfall, and hopefully we'll see some additional rainfall and improvements in the soil moisture. So I think that concludes the water supply update, and thank you everybody for joining.
Hey, Aaron, would it be a fair conclusion of your presentation to say this? We're monitoring drought. We're looking to understand what the drought may mean for us in the future. But our reservoirs and the water that we have in storage now, we're in really good shape heading into the summertime. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're about 94% full. We've kind of maintained at that point over the last month or so. So we've been getting just enough rain to maintain that. So we're in perfect position to meet the needs of the basin and weather whatever comes at us. So absolutely.
Aaron, you and your team have spent quite a bit of time in the last week or so traveling around the basin, attending some of the flood planning public meetings. Can you talk just a little bit about the flood planning process, the water planning process, and where people can go to get tuned in to those two very critical activities that are ongoing?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll talk about regional flood planning quickly first. So I think it was the 87th, 86th Texas legislature, that required the Texas Water Development Board to develop a flood planning process similar to what's the regional water planning process. So that process started in about a year ago, and it concluded, or it's in the early stages. We're kind of in the process of wrapping that up, towards the summer. But basically, we're trying to get feedback from everyone in the basin. So we have two regional flood planning groups, one in the upper basin, Brazos regional flood planning group, which goes from essentially upstream of Possum Kingdom northwestward, and then the lower Brazos, which includes all the reservoir system from Possum Kingdom down to Freeport. And so we're compiling data. Half Associates is a technical consultant. The group itself is varies with all the interest groups, and we're trying to, over the last week or so, we've had several public meetings throughout the basin, trying to educate folks of what the process is. Essentially, we're trying to identify, and when I say we, it's the regional flood planning group. It's trying to identify flood risks, flood needs, and the possibility of projects, evaluations that could better inform areas that do have impacts of flooding, develop projects and get that into the flood plan to have potentially the access of Texas Water Development Board funding in the future for those to mitigate flooding. So that's the regional flood planning group. I think today we have there's a meeting in Rosenberg from 4 to 6 for that area to come and receive public input on the strategies and what the flood risk in that area. So all the while in a separate planning process is the regional water planning. And so in most of our area, we have the Brazos G regional Water Planning Group, which we're the administrative agent and sponsor of that group. That is really kind of gearing up for the next 5-year cycle. And, so this is the time where, to get involved, look at the population projections and move forward with getting involved in that. And so there's brazosg.org, I think is the website for the Regional Water Planning Group for Brazos G, and that's basically goes all the way from Abilene down to around College Station area. So, definitely get involved in both regional water planning and regional flood planning.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. Once again, we've come to the end of our hour. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Don't forget, if you have questions for us for anything that you heard about or any other BRA or water related topic, feel free to send it to us at information@brazos.org. May 23rd for our next board meeting, and then we'll have another brown bag 2 weeks after that. So once again, thank you for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.